Hi there and welcome to Q&A Wednesday. It is Wednesday again, and I know I had a break from you all last week, which actually I totally miss you. So not that it's a really great thing for me to have a break from you, but of course it was necessary. As you know, I was in Pittsburgh last week competing at Masters Nationals, and it was quite the experience. We'll talk a little bit about that tonight, but I have a really great topic tonight. I think it's very relevant for those of us that compete, or for anyone who's been in a situation where maybe a big event happens, and then afterwards you kind of feel a little bit of what I call post-competition depression or post-show depression. It is a real thing, and so we're going to discuss that a little bit. First, just for some follow-up on my competition from last week, it was a great experience. This girl is just not big enough, and so it was my final competition. I am ready for a break. My family's ready for a break, so huge break. Whether it's true retirement or not, I don't know yet, but it's all good. We're gonna take some time off, and I'm gonna focus a little bit more on my family and my business and my people, and it's gonna be great. So super excited for those on my team and those that I know from the area that are in Vegas right now getting ready to compete at the USA's. That is a great show. Competed at that last year, had a really great time, and did a little better at that show than I did at the current one that I just came back from, but good luck to all of them. I know they're going to do amazing. I'm super excited for them. And so, rah, go team. I'm excited about that. But so let's talk a little bit about this. I know that this is a little more focused on, for those of you that have either been through a competition, and of course, my experience is not necessarily with powerlifting or anything of that sort. It's more of the physique and the bodybuilding. However, I would assume that in general there are some things that are in common. And like I said, post-show depression is a real thing. And I don't think that we talk enough about it. I think that it's one of those things that when people finish up with their competitions, it's kind of a surprise, and it's a little difficult to re-enter back into the real world. I call it trying to become a civilian again after a few years of bodybuilding, become a civilian into a regular lifestyle again. But it should be interesting, it should be fun, and I should be able to prove that you can do it and stay healthy. So feel free to watch and see what happens. But let's talk a little bit about that, because one of the things that happens, I kind of liken, the after effects of competing to having babies. I'm a mom of 5. I totally get it. And people talk about postpartum depression all the time, and I think it comes down to when you have something that that it consumes your life like that, and it does. Competing consumes your life for anywhere from 16 to 20 weeks. Or for those of us that have competed for a while, I never figured that I was off season. I don't believe in off season. I believe in a growth season, and I believe in a cutting season. But once an athlete, you're always an athlete, whether you're building for the next show or cutting for the next show. You're still an athlete, and you still have to act like one. But you get kind of consumed by the experience and by everything that's involved. And even though it's a temporary experience, and you kind of put a lot of things off, like friends and family and functions and food, cravings, things that you want to eat, it comes down to being kind of obsessed with this. And when you get to the end, no matter the outcome, whether you do well, whether you don't do well, whether you place, whether you don't, there is a kind of a letdown after the fact, where it's like, wow, that's all there is, now what? Because for, like I said, that 16 to 20 plus weeks, you kind of are all involved in, cardio, double cardio, eating a very specific way. And even though it's very focused and very temporary, when you're done, you feel a little lost. And so, if I can kind of help prepare you for that, if this is something that you're interested in doing, whether you've experienced it or not, why not? Why not prepare you for that, maybe? So let's talk a little bit about that. Like I said, it kind of comes down to kind of that build up, kind of like when you're pregnant for 40 weeks, and you can't wait for that baby to be born, and then all of a sudden it's great and it's wonderful, and you're the mom or the dad, but all of a sudden you're tired, and things aren't quite the way that you expect them to be. It's kind of a similar thing. You don't always know what to expect when you're finished with a competition. And so I have a few tips in order to get through that, but I'm going to tell you that no matter how well I do, or how well I think I'm prepared for it, I always do hit a little bit of post-show depression after the fact, just because it really is to an extent, it's sort of a letdown, and I liken it. I just feel lost. I feel lost when I'm done. You go from an extremely regimented lifestyle, very scheduled. I'm up first thing in the morning by 5, doing cardio, eating a very, very specific way. I like how my body's changing, to kind of wandering around going, and now what? So that's part of it. Like I said, it's kind of a temporary obsession with it. And so you kind of have to readjust yourself to a real lifestyle, because you cannot live in competition prep your whole life. You just can't, especially as a woman. I get down to 5-6% body fat, and that is not something that's healthy for my body to maintain. Not only that, but my body will fight me on it. So I'm going to lose a little bit of my definition and some of those lines that I appreciate and I love, and again, it's kind of hard to do. So couple of tips in order to get through it, and then we're going to talk a little bit also today about whether or not, if it's your first competition, whether or not you have a realistic expectation of winning your very first show. So we're going to talk about that. So back to the post show depression situation, and if you have any specific questions, or if you've dealt with it before, or you have a tip for someone, please definitely list it below. There's my son behind me, because you know what, sometimes your experience can help someone else get through their situation as well. It's always good to have some different ideas through that. But my first tip in order to get through some of those feelings is, number one, I think one of the first things you have to do afterwards is take some time to process and reflect. I have to process everything. Like I said, I'm one of them that I take everything that I do pretty significantly to heart. And I feel like I don't do very well, obviously there's something I'm missing or something I've done wrong. But sometimes I just have to take a step back and really think, okay, what could I have done different? Or, is it one of those situations where, I did everything I possibly could, and it just didn't turn out the way that I would hoped. Sometimes it's the judges are just looking for something different, or it also depends on who shows up. So I actually need a few days to process what happened. Think about it. Could I have done it differently? And honestly, through this process, there's a little twinge of, well, maybe I should try again. Maybe that wasn't my best physique on stage. However, I'm very aware at this point that, I made a decision to take a break, an extended break, and that really needs to be what I need to do. And the more that I think about it, the more I realize that was a good choice for me. But I do think it's important to reflect on what happened. I don't come out of it angry and frustrated. I hear a lot of competitors vent on social media about how they were robbed. And you know what? It's a subjective sport. You have no control over what they're looking for or who shows up. And a lot of times, somebody's freaking out over what they think, they should have gotten first place. And I'm looking at them going, oh, honey, you need some more experience, because you have no idea what they were looking for, and they made the right choice. So keep that in mind, that you have no control over that. And sometimes reflecting back on that and looking at what could have changed or done different, hopefully you can come back the next time around with a better package, a better attitude. And sometimes it even comes down to some minor details that you didn't think about, like maybe you just didn't smile, or maybe you just need to have a little more confidence on stage. So by reflecting on that does help to kind of take it in, and be okay with what happened in that situation. The next suggestion that I'm going to have is, getting back to civilian life, still find a routine. Give yourself a little leeway. I know most of us go out and we eat some crazy stuff, that we've kind of put off for a while. But I do think that it's important to come back to a routine, find something. I still get up at 5. I'm still doing cardio. Yes, I'm allowing myself a little bit more in the way of carbs and food, just because my body's happy with it. And here and there, I want a few things that I haven't been able to have for a long time. But I'm not going crazy, because again, I don't want to blow up like a balloon. And I don't want to put that demand on my metabolism where it's really been kind of stunted for a little while. I do reverse diet and build my way back up to what is healthy. So, but I do have a routine. It helps my head function better. Your body likes a schedule. So by kind of immersing yourself back into that kind of an idea where you're back to, even if it's just a modified, I haven't actually started lifting since I've come back. I am doing cardio, but my body does need that little bit of a break and a little bit of a rest. I've put a lot on my body for the last few weeks. And so tomorrow will be my first lift after coming back from Pittsburgh. It was quite a trip. You know, got there, had a red-eye flight Monday night, got there Tuesday afternoon, checked into my hotel, a little bit of jet lag, 3 hours difference. The next day, you know, starting to fill up on carbs, getting ready for the show, tan, check-in. The next day was competition all day, and then literally the next morning, Thursday morning, we hopped on a plane early. So, you know, my body's had taken a beating here. I've needed a little bit of a break, but the routine in general has helped me kind of ease back into the situation. I also highly recommend, oh, I just lost my train of thought. That happens too. That you all, if you have another goal to look forward to, and not necessarily another competition goal, but even just something specific. Like I came back, I immediately had a photo shoot ready to go, so I had something to focus on. I had clients waiting, I had a great waiting list for me, and I had to back off that clientele when I was getting ready for a show. So everybody's super excited that I have energy back and that I can jump in and work with them. So I did have something to look forward to, and my goals have changed a little bit, so I'm able to put some things into place that don't get quite the same attention when I'm getting ready to compete. So that has helped me get past that little bit of situation. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I've had a few emotional days. I've had some breakdowns. I've cried. You know, it is with your hormones getting back into the situation, getting back under control, and just, again, reliving some of the situations and processing that. I've needed to kind of get through those emotions in order to feel a little more emotionally stable, and that's normal. Also, don't allow yourself to get too far off track. You know, if this is your first competition, it really is important to work your metabolism back into a healthy situation. So yeah, go have a pizza, maybe have a drink or two, that's fine. But don't, you know, I had a coach once tell me, just do whatever you want for the whole week. Yeah, A, that does not work for me, and B, I found myself in front of my toilet ready to puke on a daily basis because I was shoving so much sugar and garbage into my body, and that's not healthy. I don't think that that's the right choice. I was ready to get back on track fairly quickly. Not that I don't allow myself some of those extras, but it's not okay to just get out of hand. And again, if you have any comments or if you've dealt with this before, please jump in. I love to hear other people's opinions and situations and experience that they've had from it. Also remember that if you're going to continue to compete, there is no off season. I don't believe in a full-on off season. I believe in a grow season. So, you know, if you allow yourself to get too far off track during that off season, you're going to have to take all that fat back off that you put on alongside the muscle you're trying to grow. So I prefer once an athlete, always an athlete. And even though I'm choosing not to compete, I still am going to behave as such because I don't want to get to that point where, you know, I've thrown now 7 years worth of habits out the window. So something important there. Definitely do take some time for your body. Like I said, I haven't lifted since I left for Pittsburgh because my joints are dry, my body's tired, and even with those extra carbs, I might feel like I have some extra energy and power and feel really good. However, it's a lot easier to injure yourself when you're in a position like that where you feel like, okay, I can go take on the world and I can lift and I feel strong. I need my joints to get rehydrated. I need my body to take that little bit of a break, and not only that, but it also allows my body to be a little more sensitive to lifting again and to get the benefits from that. And here goes my son again, party in the background. So taking a little bit of time off is an okay thing, but I'm actually excited and ready to lift again because you do kind of at the end of a season get to the point where you feel weak and you feel tired and you don't always want to go to the gym. So I'm actually excited to get in there. Now, am I really excited to talk about the situation and how I did at my competition? Not really. So if you're watching this, you know, how do I feel about it? You know, I wish I would have done better. Am I going to cry about it at this point? No, but you know, let me get back to it. Let me get back to my real life and to enjoy what I do. Now, am I completely distancing myself from the competition world? No, I coach, so I will be part of it. It's just going to be from a slightly different angle. And I do have some physique goals for myself, including I'm looking at shrinking back down just a little bit so that my body can maintain the muscle that I have and it's not so expensive to hold on to. So again, next tip would be don't try to stay contest ready year round. It is just not going to happen. Again, for those of us that get really, really lean, as like I said, 5 or 6% for a woman, that is pretty lean, and your body will fight you on it. It's not necessarily healthy to try and stay that way. So do I want to, like I said, blow up like a balloon and put a bunch of weight on? No. But you know, staying 5 or 6% is not realistic. I have some better goals. And here's what happens. I come back, I set my new diet or my new meal plan. I put my Fitbit back on, it's on the charger, so that I can actually pay attention to what my formula is and what's working for me, and be able to maintain where I want to go with that. So I have a way to work with that. Setting a new goal is definitely a great idea. And again, I have a little bit, originally started competing because I wanted to keep myself in check. For those of you that know me, I used to be obese. And so maintaining some healthier habits, I had to have a specific goal to work towards. At this point, I think I have that down. However, I like setting goals. I like being able to reach for a new goal. And I do have some things in the works that are going to help me with that. So I'm good with it. It'll be good. You'll see some things come along here in the near future. But on top of that, remember too that when you're competing, you have put some people off in your life in order to maintain the atmosphere that you need in order to compete. Spend some time with your friends and family. You know, they want to spend time with you. My kids need that attention. You know, those people in my life that have kind of gone, okay, I cannot go out with you because I can't drink, so what fun am I? You know, it's time to spend a little bit of time with them, go on maybe a vacation, and I've got some things in the work for that. So I apologize. I seriously thought I picked a better spot for this time so that the sun was not in my face, and it's still getting there. So if I look blind, I kind of am just a little bit, but hopefully that helps you a little bit with the post-show depression situation. Again, that can be in any sort of a competition or a short-term goal where you're putting some things off and making some very distinct choices in your life. So hopefully that applies and you can get something out of that. So next thing I want to talk about, however, really quickly is, you know, I love working with new competitors. I find that it's such an exciting experience for them, and having been a new competitor at one point, I remember how it felt to be working with a coach, and really it's new, everything's new and exciting, and I have all these grand ideas. And, you know, I want to talk about whether or not it's realistic to think that your very first competition, whether or not you can win, because there are some variables to that. So not that I don't want you to be positive and excited to participate in a bodybuilding competition or any competition for that matter, but I do want you to go into it with a realistic expectation of what to expect. And there's some variables that can play into that. So keep in mind that this is your very first show, your very first competition. You're probably excited. You don't know any different. You know, I'm gonna take on the world. I'm gonna bring home a trophy. I'm gonna be first place. And you know what? It probably is gonna happen. However, I want to make sure that that you're aware of some things that can happen there. I don't want you to come away from it being devastated because somebody who has way more experience, and this is like their 8th, 10th, 12th year of competing, won and you didn't. Because again, there's some things that can play into that. So keep in mind these things may or may not play into it. Number one, you don't know who's gonna show up. Right? At your first show, especially if you've never seen a show, I highly recommend that if you're competing that you go watch one, because that way you at least know what to see. Oh, very cool. Hey, Brianna, I would definitely will. Yeah, and I saw that you guys are having a sale, so totally going to be there. My tanning people, they're so great. So keep in mind that you don't know who's going to show up. So, you know, if somebody who's had lots of experience, they've been there before, and they, you know, they come back every year with a better package, they've got a good chance, especially if they've had experience. They know how to pose. They have all experience. There's a good chance that they're going to place fairly well. Not always, but you know, it happens. Now, for those of you who are brand new and have not experienced before, a lot of the categories do have novice and even true novice categories, as well as masters options. So true novice is for people who've never competed before. Novice is that you haven't, it depends on the show, but that you haven't placed usually top 3. Some of it's top, you know, if you haven't placed first place, some of it's top 2, top 3. So you have that option to compete. That way you're competing against people with similar experience to you. Masters is usually 35 for women and over, and sometimes there's multiple levels. And guys, it's usually 40 and over. So keep in mind that, you know, when you're in those kind of classes, you're competing on a slightly different level. It kind of evens the playing field out just a little bit. And a lot of people choose to do multiple classes. So you might do a novice and an open. But if you're choosing to do an open, remember that no matter what, you're up against people who have had some experience and have probably had multiple seasons to build. So they know what they're looking for. They know what the judges are looking for. They know what to expect. They have that experience. They have that confidence. So make sure that you are getting plenty of posing practice. Plenty, plenty, plenty. My goal for my people is that when they pose and they're nervous, I want them to be able to default into correct poses. And if you've only been kind of practicing from what you've seen on the internet and from YouTube, you're probably not going to do as well, because posing's tough and they're looking for some very specific things. Not only that, but posing can make or break your situation, because if you have some flaws that you're trying to camouflage, or you're trying to accentuate the positive, you got to know how to be able to do that. And no matter which category we're talking about, bikini, physique, figure, whatever, there are ways to do that. So keep in mind that posing and practice are going to be a big, big part of that. So, you know, depending on which category that you're in, the harder the category, so bikini obviously has some of the biggest classes, figure, still some bigger classes. When you're hitting more like physique and women's bodybuilding, or for men bodybuilding, the classes tend to be a little bit smaller. So of course you're not going to be up against as many people. However, the differences are going to be there. You know, for women's physique, it's a harder category. My issue this time was I just wasn't big enough. Those girls were huge. So again, I was up against women my age, 35 and 40 and over. Those women were big. Right? So keep that in mind. Also, you don't have complete control over what the judges are looking for. Yes, in theory, they're supposed to be looking for conditioning, symmetry, size. In that order, doesn't always happen that way. You know, sometimes the judges are biased one way or another. Sometimes there's a little bit of politics that plays into that. It happens. Welcome to real life. So, you know, the more that they see you on stage, the more likely you are to place a little bit better, because they're looking for, did you bring a better package this year? Not just do you look the same, but do you look better than you did last time? And they do recognize faces. So, you know, that is part of it. Also, how long have you been building muscle? You know, some of us that have been lifting a little bit longer have a little bit of an advantage, because we've got some mature muscle that we've put on, versus somebody who's only been lifting for a year or two. A little different ball game. So that can come into play. Just even experience around the sport. So even if this is your very first season or your first year, you know, there are women or people who do very, very well, but they've been around the sport for a while. It's not like, oh, hey, I woke up today and decided I'm going to go do bikini, because that happens. You know, they've seen what it takes. They've watched people compete. They've been around the situation. They've worked, you know, kind of around with coaches. Maybe their trainer is a coach. They have a lot more experience. And I've seen people their very first season get on stage and take it all. But they've had some experience working with it before, one way or another, in the sport area. So the other thing is that, you know, you can do all the work in the background. You can show up, you can have the suit, you can have the practice, but there's something called peaking. You know, your goal is to get on stage at the exact moment that you look your very, very, very best, and there's a science behind it. Everything from pulling water to carbing up, and it's easy to mess it up. So my suggestion on that, if you've never done this before and you're kind of looking into it, please use a qualified coach, because if you're just learning some things on the internet and you're not sure what you're doing, super, super easy to flub that one up. Okay, so make sure that you have somebody that knows how to watch your body. You can change your body overnight before you get on stage. You can change it within an hour, within minutes, and look completely different on stage than you do backstage. But you got to have some guidance there in order to know what to do in order to get to that point. So that can be a big part of it. And the biggest thing, though, is practice. Actually, Andre Scott, yes, Andre Scott, says this all the time. It's not that practice makes perfect. perfect practice makes perfect. So you've got to have not only practice, but you got to have some guidance in what's perfect practice for you. What are your best angles? What flaws do we need to kind of camouflage a little bit? So keep that in mind. You know, I really hope that you do have a great experience. My very first season, my very first show, I did a master's class and I believe I took first in masters and second in open. Now, granted, it was a smaller show. Night of Champions 2012 was my first show, and at the time it was a little bit smaller show than it is now. Now it's huge. The Rubicks have done a great job. It is an incredibly huge production. And it's wonderful. It's just much bigger than it used to be. And I did very, very well. Now, there's the benefit to that was that, you know, I felt good about my physique. I went on to do another class. The downside was I was a little overconfident, and you know, going into my first national show, thought I was just going to take home my pro card right there. Not so. It's been an interesting experience. It's been an interesting ride. So, but you know, you're going to learn something different each time. Your goal is to give the best you that you possibly can. Give the best package. Do everything in your power to do as well as you possibly can. And then you kind of have to leave it up to the judges and to what's going to happen there. And if I can leave one more thing, please do not walk off stage with a sour attitude. We see it on your faces. You know, I've seen people be up there, and as they're moving around, and people's faces start to look like, oh. It shows on your face. And you know what? That leaves a lasting impression on the judges' minds. When you come back next year, they might remember that, and that's probably not the impression that you want to leave with them, especially if you are going to continue to compete in the future. So hopefully you got some great ideas and some great things from it. Hopefully you understand a little bit more behind the scenes on how the bodybuilding world works. You know, I know sometimes we just see what goes up on stage, and we're not aware of all of the work and the hard dedication that goes into it, because it's a difficult sport. It is a selfish sport. It's a lot of personal time involved in it. Is it worth it? I think it is. You know, you're trying to prove yourself as a better you, but I think that anything where you try to become a better version of yourself is important, whether it's, you know, bodybuilding or some other sport. You know, I'm a cheerleader for them all. I just want people to be healthy, and whatever helps them to maintain that or keeps them motivated, I'm super excited and game for that. So have an incredible evening. Definitely I'll be back next week. Hopefully we'll be here every week with some great questions. I get my best questions from you guys, so either leave a message below with a question or some ideas. You can also email me at melissa@fillmorefitness.com. Again, some fun, great things coming up here in the near future, so stay focused and keep up, because I'm just going to be doing some great things. I'm super excited. I love working with people. So until then, have an incredible night, and we'll talk to you soon.